What happens when we go viral? IShowSpeed blew up at the age of 16 when he started streaming 2K. Clicks qualified for the World Cup at 14, and Stable Ronaldo was just 2 years older when he sang Payphone. There are thousands of creators, streamers, and brands who've blown up young. They live successful lives at such a young age, and because they're so young, we think it's possible for ourselves. We end up believing the answer to our problems is this same success. But there's a massive issue that no one seems to address. Their lives of fame, money, and luxury may seem great on the surface, but what we can't see is the pressure, the isolation, and a lack of progress that all wear these creators down. The worst part is, even if we don't achieve this virality, we'll still be met with the same problems on our own journey towards our own goals. We're gonna go over the 3 main issues that these viral teenagers face and how we can learn from their struggles to make the life towards our goals so much easier. Young creators struggle and work until they're burnt out. Desperate for a life of fame, we cling to our goals and hold this supposedly meaningful accomplishment as an idol in our lives. We keep going through this doubt and failure, even though our inevitable success may not come for years. We're delusional enough to feel like we deserve the success today, but we don't understand the years of struggle and hardship that goes into going viral. These viral teenagers make it onto the world stage and somehow had what it takes to maintain their spot in the light. But with this tremendous high comes a depressing low. Because of their age, these creators most often have not developed their own foundation. And because they haven't validated themselves, they turn to their audience for the same. When we obsess over our success, we ignore the life experiences that really push us forward. These teenagers blew up so young that their bank of life experience and foundations to base themselves off of just aren't there. They get jolted into the limelight and all of a sudden have millions of eyes on their every move. They finally succeed, but the problem is they are pressured to maintain this clout and even continue to rise in their professions. The goal they once had to blow up becomes an even harder ideal to reach. Most people can't relate to their arrogant goals, and because of it, they're isolated. In our lives, we're surrounded by people who lack vision and feel the same. We feel like success is the only way out of this despair. But what we forget is that when we do make it, this feeling of isolation gets even worse. No one around us will be able to relate to our problems, and it becomes even more difficult to find people we can relate to. But why is this so important?
I'm not in the studio right now, and everybody in my world thinks I'm crazy. What's going on? You need another album out. The time is running out. You have a certain window to make music. For a little while, I listened to that, and I was like in the studio working real hard, trying to get it done. And you know, music was created, but it wasn't my best. And it wasn't my best because there was no substance. And there was no substance because there was no experience. And the only reason why The Miseducation was the album it was because of a myriad of experiences that took place before the production part, before the creation.
Because of this lack of a personal foundation, many of these creators rely on the approval of their audiences. They stream more, go harder, and work until they have no energy or passion left for their audiences. If they take a break, their audience will notice, and before they know it, the general consensus is that they fell off. This happens in our own lives as well. We keep pushing without ever having the breaks and experiences we need. With these breaks, we come to new meaningful realizations that will push us forward, and we can finally take a look back to see how far we've already come. Content creators end up using the algorithms for personal approval, and rather than make great content, they simply document their lives, try to go viral, and do anything in their power for this approval. All because of a simple reason that we forget in our own personal lives. We obsess over our work and ignore our reality on purpose. We tunnel vision into our goals, work harder, and burn out because we aren't open to these life experiences that will really push us forward. The solution often lies in the one area we aren't looking, the spot in the corner of our eye that we forget is even there. Especially when we're working so hard, many of our problems simply get ignored for the sake of our one goal that we think has the mythical answer. It is exactly this life experience that motivates us to keep pushing, but we ignore the obvious answer. Our mind gets worse and we lose the game. These creators are separated from their own natural desires. They burn out simply because of the difference between how they see themselves and how the audience they identify with sees them. A big reason for this pressure is because of this gaze. We fall into the trap of identifying with how people see us rather than having the confidence to stand on what we really want. Many of these viral creators end up identifying with what their audiences think, and because of it, they push until they quit. They end up resenting their audiences and have no idea why. Take some time to find people working towards a similar goal. If you're grinding and doing the hard work alone, you just won't have the strength to keep going. But if we have people around us who know what we're working towards and are actively pushing us forward, we'll keep going and get to the place we truly want. Lean into your own unique personality and accept the consequences of who you are. But the truth is, even if we find these people, we'll inevitably reach a ceiling to our growth. We'll get stuck and have no idea how to get past it. In our lives, we make progress, but still get stuck in the same spot and have no idea why. We think that if we work harder, we'll somehow manage to escape the grasp of our habits. But nothing ever seems to work. Gideon got stuck at 230,000 subs, Sneeko was stuck at 30k, and Ronaldo was stuck at 300 viewers, even after he already went viral. The problem here is often not what we think. Viral teenagers cling to luxury cars and houses because they haven't developed as people. These creators blow up so young that the process of self-learning and discovery gets ignored. They get stuck in their businesses, we get stuck in one place in our lives and have no idea what's wrong. The problem is our foundation and relationship with ourselves. A lot of times, we lack the realizations we only get from experience to take us to the next level. The difference between IShowSpeed and someone like Gideon getting stuck at 230,000 subscribers is that Speed's foundation is so well developed. He still likes cars, because let's be honest, cars are fun, but he is extremely comfortable with who he is and what he wants that he relates to anyone. His growth seems to never stop because he has a super high ceiling as a person. But in our lives, we get stuck because of our foundation. We grind and come to the same conclusions, make the same mistakes because an area of our lives has been ignored. We have a lack of information, and all it takes is one realization, a conversation, or one experience to completely change our direction. But how can we have these experiences if we close ourselves off to the world for the sake of our goals? Do we really want what we think we want? There's a great book on this called The Motive. He describes this period where entrepreneurs neglect their most important responsibilities for the sake of their businesses. A great way to add these things back into our lives is to think about what we did and liked as a kid. There's so many things we try that get lost when we enter the real world. We're told to grow up, and because of this, we neglect our natural passions and even our original identity. We get so lost that ultimately our hard work becomes a way to escape this feeling. We become so isolated from what we really want that it takes a toll on our entire lives. Over time, our strength gets worse until we completely burn out. But if we simply took a break, take time to write and reflect, our problems will simply go away. We'll rebuild the parts of our foundation that are missing. We'll push forward and finally be able to make the meaningful progress we saw from the beginning.
After being away for a long enough period of time, when we come back, we just may be able to see it as if for the first time.
Stable Ronaldo is a great example of this. In 2023, he really fell off. Ron went from 10,000 concurrent viewers on Twitch to only 300. It's the most depressing thing that can happen to anyone who made it on social media. But this is probably the best thing that can happen. Ronaldo went from streaming exclusively Fortnite, a game he hated, to coming back, being himself, and doing whatever he wants. During these breaks, we finally get the opportunity we needed. We come back to our foundation and patch the areas that need fixing. We return to the same goals in our lives, but come back as a completely different person. Our mindsets change, our ethic improves, and we finally get to the breakthrough we always needed. In our lives, we get so focused on our goals that we ignore the relationships we have in real life. These interactions and experiences are exactly what fuel our creativity. But what happens when we reach the goals we wanted to achieve? What happens when these stars blow up? With all this fame, we'd think it would make us more social and more relatable to others. But what happens is exactly the opposite. Our audiences know our entire lives, yet the loneliness we feel is worse than ever. These creators get idolized and worshipped to the point where they can't relate to a large majority of their audience. Their audiences see their idols as some figure of fame and can only interact with them through this fantasy. They see them as more than they are, leading to even more despair for these creators. Even worse, in relationships, their friends, family, and partners can only see them as their online persona. Their dramatic online personality overtakes their day-to-day life, and their alter ego can even start to become their true identity. When we get to these goals in our own lives, we think we'll be appreciated and loved by everyone. But really, what we forget is that most people have dreams themselves, but are too afraid to go after them. The same way fans only interact with their idols through a fantasy, so do the people around us when we achieve our own goals. Every time they see us, they're reminded of the goals they ignored. They interact with their own insecurity through us, leading to isolation. During these periods of isolation and despair, we must understand the growth that comes from these times. We must understand that it's not a bad thing to feel lost, because these tremendous lows will naturally be met with a tremendous high. As long as we keep going, without the low, we would never be able to appreciate our growth, and we'd even take it for granted. If we learn to appreciate these times, we will grow. Throughout these periods, our foundation is built, the chains unlatch, and momentum begins to take over. We can start to let go just a little bit and watch our creation take on a form of its own. If we can learn to be authentic, our audiences will come to know who we truly are, the people in our lives will know who we are, and this isolation will start to disappear.
But there's something special about like when things are really bad. And I always think about it like Santa Claus. Like Santa Claus delivers all the presents in the middle of the night when it's dark. So when something is dark happening in my life, I'm just looking around like I know the presents are around here somewhere.
Facts, right?
And like,
but how can we overcome this fantasy of success? When we yearn for this massive amount of success, we forget the growth we can actually see if we just pull back from this fantasy. We don't realize that to go viral, we're competing on the world stage. We must become the best of the best to achieve this massive amount of success. And we have no control over what people want to see online. But all of us can have our own space, whether that's online or in real life. We can maintain this smaller community, and when the time comes, momentum moves and we'll blow up out of that space. But we'll never be able to see the vision we always wanted if we give up because the pressure is just too much to handle. There's a lot of problems that viral teenagers have, but there is hope. We can easily solve these same problems with a slight change in our perspective. Sometimes we can ignore the downsides that come with massive success, but if we can understand both sides of the coin, we will know which path to take in our lives. If we can sacrifice this fantasy of success, we will finally be able to achieve the goals we've always wanted. We can have our own little space online, attain freedom, master our craft, meet people, and make the money we always wanted to make. Later down the road, we can blow up out of this niche and reach the next level. But without a plan, we will inevitably get lost.